Nice.
Yeah, but she wouldn't get off after that.
I still.
Hey, if you're joining us virtually or if you're going to watch the recording, we're going to start the class by talking about that speech we had by Booker T. Washington at the the International Exposition in Atlanta. This had to do with a big agriculture kind of like fair, I guess you'd call it, where they're showing off new technology and things like that and advancements. Because agriculture sectors were wanting to also show that they were advancing in the same way that industries were as well. So, but of course, the South also had a significant African American population. And so that's where we have leaders such as Booker T. Washington coming up and speaking about where are African Americans' place in all of this. We might read a counter speech to this by another African American leader called W.E.B. Du Bois. Gosh, I forgot his name. But he writes in more of an invective style. He's not quite as compromising as Booker T. Washington. So we can see about that in a bit. So did everybody read here?
Yes.
Yes, we did. All right. So let's go ahead and begin. All right, let me get my copy. All right, so I would like each of you's general feelings on this. So, Jalissa, I'm gonna pick on you first. What's your general? Okay, you're gonna have to wait. All right, go ahead, Levy.
So basically, he's talking to a white person, obviously, or he wouldn't write like this.
Yeah, most
probably a congressman. But I think to the president and the board of directors
of essentially like this fair, right?
Right.
So not of America.
Of an exposition.
Yeah.
And he talks about I didn't read this first.
But what's your general feeling about it?
He wants each side to understand what the other one has done for them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
to not be so,
Mm-hmm.
to not be
It's a speech.
such a
on equality.
stereotypical.
Yeah, it's a speech on equality, and he does it at this big fair because it affects a lot of people.
Okay.
But the whole thing is he's not saying that the blacks are better, the whites are better. He's saying that it says, I highlighted it, no race can prosper till it learns that there's as much dignity in tilling a field as in writing a poem.
I like
It's
some
at
of
the
the
bottom
things
of
that
the life, we must begin and not at the top.
Yeah.
I like some of the things that he talks about. That he talks about like 1/3 of the South is our race.
Mhm.
So
It was before the Great Migration.
and then he then talks about how would you rather have 1/3 lazy or stupid or savage
Mm-hmm.
or population, or would you rather have a smart working population?
Yeah.
Right.
I thought that was cool. It's like it's explaining using
Would
logic.
you-
Like, would you rather have a good working population or
Would you rather have a whole bunch of racist and like messed up people, or would you rather have people who
Except for
understood and accepted each other and dealt with each other for who they are, not just who they used to be?
But the problem with this is that they couldn't get over the fact that, yes, we did mess up, and they wanted revenge in a way, and so they would treat everyone horribly and it didn't work for anyone.
Oh yeah, and there were some old ideas too about this was also the time when throughout the whole world you had something called scientific racism, right?
Right.
And it wasn't like really scientific, but they would apply scientific principles to try to show how one race is better than the other and stuff like that, right? Like later on, people like Hitler would really buy into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
where you would have a group called social Darwinists who would really buy into this as well. So, but yeah, he in his autobiography, that's one thing he outlined is that he was always quick to forgive like white people who were racist because he wanted to live in Christian unity. But also, he was always disappointed in that, in his opinion, he feels that slaves were given freedom without direction. And so a lot of people who never had free choice, all of a sudden could, they could have cash, they didn't know what to do with it. So they would spend it on like liquor and stuff like that, or they didn't quite understand that they had to work hard to
Which
move
is
up.
wrong, they should have explained to the slaves, like, this is how life really is.
And they tried to do that with the Freedmen's Bureau, with like education and stuff like that. But it was like, you can't, I mean, you have generations of people who grew up, and as a slave, ordinarily people would try to not work hard.
So they didn't wanna go to school?
A lot of them were old, right? It's hard to learn. They didn't really apply their brains ever either. And if you never really have to apply yourself, it's really hard. And there's like developmental problems with that.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
Well, I think that he makes a good point in that a lot of the people are just kind of not doing a super good job of interacting with a lot of people in their community.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of keeping to themselves because they're so afraid.
Mm-hmm.
They don't put down their roots and spread out to get to know more people, and so they just stand in the place where they feel afraid.
Yeah,
And it just kind of compounds the problem.
that's right.
It doesn't make it any better.
It really doesn't, yeah, because that disunity is like part of the problem. And of course, that kind of runs counter, like I was telling you, I'll find the counter from Du Bois, and he's one of the founders of the NAACP, and he has a different idea. He thinks, look, these folks don't like us, we need less to do with them, right? Essentially, if I remember correctly. So I'll get that counter speech for you later. But you listen, get your opinion.
Well, he was like, he wanted the other side to not be like super, like, I don't know how to explain it. He just wanted to have like some kind of friendship strategy more because of everything that happened between the two sides. Like this would be like a new, he said at the very end, it would be like a new heaven and a new earth. I don't know.
Okay.
He just wanted some kind of like
Yeah.
modern.
I think you're right. Yeah, he was a very devout man. He's a workaholic too. So, like, he really believed that he was like living out a mission, right? So, anything else? So yeah, it's about unity. He's like, hey, remember, before you hate people, remember who helped build all the stuff around you and took care of your babies, like as nurses and stuff like that. It's like if you trust someone that much before they have freedom, maybe you should trust them when they do have freedom, right? So that's part of it. So yeah, unity, and that's a part of the. I mean, really, if you take race out of the equation, that's part of what it is to be an American. I mean, like it's supposed to be a melting pot. People are unified. We have.
The Great American Melting Pot.
Yeah. I mean, we're supposed to. We're a nation, but we're not a nation that lives for the nation. We're a nation that's supposed to be people who live with each other. So, one of those things kind of supposed to separate us from, say, like European nationalist governments. So, here I'm going to go ahead and get our PowerPoint up for the day. Does anybody remember where we left off?
The Gilded Age.
Yeah, I know it's the Gilded Age, because that's the whole topic.
Actually, we left off on Indian policies.
Oh, yeah.
Political issues from 1877 to 1898.
Grief, we just started this then. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. So, I got a picture here. Y'all see anything about this picture?
It's a
It's
finger.
New York
Ah,
and New Jersey. It's the line between New York and New Jersey.
yeah.
And it says under the thumb, blah, 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 what are you gonna do about it? I think it's talking about, it's probably a political comic about how the people in power are so powerful that you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Look at that button.
Mhm.
William M. Tweed. So yeah,
Don't know
this
who
is
that is.
about. He's basically a party boss in New York, and so you can think about like different cities fell under something that's called a political machine.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you remember back in the day with President Andrew Jackson, he had the spoil system for the presidency, right? Whenever he became president, he'd fire everybody and give all of his friends jobs. Well,
That
political
is not
machines were the
fair.
same. Yeah, but that's how it works in most of the world, like
That's
third
not
world
fair.
countries.
Like, if your friends definitely aren't qualified and you just hire them because, oh, that's my best friend. Like,
Well, and that's a very American way to think. I remember once hearing about an anthropologist who studied Afghanis. He went to Afghanistan. And he's like trying to figure out what's their idea of corruption. And so he had an answer to that. It's like if you ask an American what corruption is, American would say corruption is giving your cousin a job because he's your cousin.
yes.
And Afghani would say corruption is
Not.
not giving your cousin a job
Really?
because he's your cousin. So like the tribal idea, right?
But
Tribal.
Just because it's tribalism doesn't mean that it's okay.
It is to them because you got to take care of your family more than anything. Your family's
Like,
your family and your
a
tribe's more
lot
important
of
than everything else.
jobs, if you're married, you're not allowed to work together. If you're related, you're not allowed to work together. Like,
In a lot of places, yeah. Because we want to make sure that things work the best possible. The best person gets the best job.
yeah, that's how it should be.
But it's not like that everywhere. And it's not like that. And don't worry, people agree with me. That's why this isn't supposed to last too long.
Tell that
So-
to the Peter Rabbit movie.
Yeah, that's why people criticize this.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know.
Equality cannot.
So that's why we have gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Merit-based system. That's what like. So the best person gets the job because you don't want somebody like as an air traffic controller is doing that job just because they know somebody.
Okay.
Because then you don't want to die in fiery ball because you know they got to play poker with somebody.
The pilot is flying the plane
Uh-huh.
because his sister's best friend's
Is on the
brother
plane.
went to pilot school. He didn't
There we
graduate,
go.
he just went through.
That's
Or-
good for somebody not me.
Or that his sister works in the Starbucks in the airport. So
Yeah.
he gets a job as a pilot.
Well, here this is kind of like that. So like the political machines, you can think of them as local political parties, to where they tried to run things and they could make rules and regulations that would help their friends, and they would give city jobs to people who were their like contributors, stuff like that, like good paying jobs. They're kind of cushy and stuff. So political machines. Don't write all this down unless you're crazy.
Why not?
Okay, if you're crazy. All right, so
I'm crazy. I'm actually looking up the actual definition.
as cities grow or grew, so did political power and political party bosses and city leaders. Political bosses gained support and votes by making improvements to infrastructure, like roads, bridges, sewers, things like that.
So
So
it
what?
was like the mob.
Yes,
Ah,
yes, very much like the mob. They provided jobs to certain groups of individuals. By certain groups, we're talking about usually kind of like certain immigration groups, certain racial groups. And so we're talking about New York area, places like that, or other places where there were a lot of industry and factories and immigrants coming in. So there's usually people like Polish groups or Italian groups or Irish groups. And so different political groups would try to latch onto these groups and segment them. They usually lived in their own part of town, and they would just corner them in for votes and stuff. Often, whenever people would get off the boats, new to the country, there you would have a representative of one of these political machines probably handing out bread and gifts, maybe even a little bit of cash, and they'll have a card on it with their name. So you know who you need to come to if you have a problem, but also who you need to vote for. They would also give favors to local businessmen, usually kind of like the mob, for like kickbacks, right? So sometimes you get bribes. Remember, the Gilded Age is all about corruption. We're going to have an age of reform to try to fix a lot of this stuff and make things more merit-based. But that's not going to be how it starts out. Usually, regulation follows a problem. It doesn't precede it, usually. Because cities grew too fast for their infrastructure to keep up with, so cities are growing. They don't have enough sewers or clean water or good roads or even housing. Political bosses granted selected gifts to these new groups for their loyalty. So yeah, I mean, like you said, at the mob. I mean, really, that's like the basic level of government is organized crime. I mean, where there is an absence of government, people organize either around a warlord or around a mob. I mean, like the USSR, the Soviet system was so messed up. It was pretty much only the mafia in Russia that could do things like where you could buy food or a car and stuff like that, or even expect good protection because the government was just so incapable of doing basic services. Due to this system, political corruption and bribes grew across the nation. So yeah, lots of money, lots of corruption. We're talking about judges getting paid to rule one way or another when somebody's getting sued. Same with lawmakers, people being on the take, getting special treatment, things like that. The most prominent political machine was Tammany Hall in New York. That was the name where they kind of gathered, led by a guy called Boss Tweed. So yeah, a lot of people, they don't get really excited about the Gilded Age unless they're really into this stuff, like reading about scandals and stuff like that. So that's when people usually kind of get into this kind of thing. Or if they like reading about often immigration stories and stuff like that. That'll pull some people into it. I don't know. I was never an American history guy, so. I like American history in ideas, but I don't really care for that.
I like current American history.
I like certain.
We're living it.
of some
2020, the great year of peace.
Corona.
Yeah, Rona and other things. Don't worry, there might be more stuff. We'll see.
It's only on.
Saw this thing. It was like Tom from Tom and Jerry was holding these people piece of paper said World War III never happened and Australia stopped burning. And he looks up, he's like, and then a pie hits him in the face and it says coronavirus.
We had to stop showing our kids Tom and Jerry because,
Really?
yeah, 'cause, it was like a couple years ago. Oh, one of them,
When the daughter of the thing was like, Tom, it's coming home.
no, they weren't hitting each other or anything like that. No, it was like there's like the baby mouse, and it kept saying the other word for cat that's not cat,
Oh,
and so my daughters kept saying it all the time.
No.
They didn't know it could have a bad meaning, so like would just
That
be
is
like a
so bad.
Walmart,
They'd be in
and
the
they would,
store and just.
yeah. So you can't have that, so we had to
No,
stop
you
showing.
can't.
Don't play cat.
Yeah, they like Tom and Jerry. It's like, sorry, kids.
Sorry, you can't. Until you're old enough to understand.
Yeah.
I grew up on Tom and Jerry.
Well, they'll get it again someday. All right. All right. You ready for the next one?
Hey, I'm on the last one.
I'm the last one. So yeah, lots of corruption. It's all over. It's from local governments, federal government. And don't worry, this wasn't just like a thing that was just
It's
a
like the
northern
mob,
thing.
but they were involved in politics.
And so they kind of got away with it.
Yeah, I mean, there
Of
were
course,
definitely.
The mob has people in politics. You can't.
Oh yeah. And there were political problems in the South, to say the least. But the political problems in the South had more to do with like politics was in the hands of a few people that were kind of just inherited and passed down to generation after generation in a way. So it was
I'm
like,
a third generation mob boss.
well, kind of, but it wasn't the mob like that. In the South, things were a little bit more legalistic, right? It's like,
Well, when my aunt lived in Cuba, the family that like, it's our extended family, so not really our family, but like we knew them, they were part of the mob. And so we had to like cut them off so we wouldn't get in trouble.
Cuban mob.
It was not fun.
Did you know that? Were they cool?
They were awesome.
Until we found out they were.
Until we found out, like, for sure, we had feelings, and then we were like, oh, they're really in the mob, and so we like cut them off.
This is like a mob, more like a cartel.
Probably more of a cartel,
Jeez.
but definitely mobbish.
Cartons?
Cart- Like cartel, like drug cartel. Okay. Hey, more political issues. So there's all this corruption going on. There's incompetent people getting jobs that they shouldn't have. And this leads to a lot of human suffering, right? If the guy in charge of the sewage system in the mail doesn't really do a good job, people don't get very important letters or bills. And you got like nasty stuff and mixing with the drinking water, and people get cholera and die. So that's bad stuff. So people are like, huh?
What's wrong with cholera?
You die from it painfully.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a
It's just
shame.
you get organ failure from dehydration, and then there's no more you.
I mean,
So efforts to address political corruption attempted to ensure that government positions were filled by merit rather than given out as favors. So this became a big political issue, and we're going to see that. See, it's becoming something people are going to run on. Like, I'm going to get rid of the corruption, but nothing's really going to happen for a long time. So, 1881, President Garfield presented the topic to the nation, but was assassinated by someone who felt he was owed a government position as a favor. So,
President of the U.S.
Garfield,
What
Yeah,
do you mean by efforts to address political
Did he, like,
corruption?
he ran on it, right? So, wait, you mean the first bullet?
Yeah, the first.
Yeah, so these are a couple of examples. So, like, Garfield ran on ending a lot of this spoil system politics, right? And so the thing is, though, when he ran, both parties had an understanding. When I win, I fire all these people in federal positions, and the people who helped me get in as president gets the job. Garfield ran against that. And when he became president, he's like, no, I'm not firing all these people. I'm just firing the ones I think are incompetent, right? And this one guy, I forgot his name, was expecting one of these jobs because he supported Garfield and thought he was owed a job and never got it. So he's like, hey,
that's like,
you didn't give me a job like everybody else would have, so I'm
that's
going
like
to kill you.
voting for Trump and then expecting him to make you vice president.
Yeah, I guess so. Or like in charge of a post office, you know. It's like, I'm supposed to be manager of the post office now. So something like that, yeah. So it's like somebody who like would like, I don't know, how about like as an aide or something. I don't remember the guy's story. In 1883, President Arthur, who's going to be president because of the assassination, passed the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, which attempted to end the spoil system was largely ignored. A lot of federal laws throughout our history have been ignored. Congress passes it, president signs it, nobody listens, they don't care. This was one of those laws, but it will come back later.
I didn't know President Arthur was a person.
Real person, yeah. Yesterday. So we're going to have laws passed. They don't have a lot of teeth like enforcement power, like in fines and imprisonment and stuff like that. But this will be used later in order to start wedging in more laws to try to stop this. So some of the reasons why this goes on is because people didn't believe the federal government had any business in doing this, because the Constitution doesn't say that the Senate and Congress has a right to legislate on things like how a city is supposed to run itself. The 10th Amendment says that all powers not outlined for the federal government are for the states or the people. So if you pay attention to the 10th Amendment, you might be someone who's like, why is Congress telling New York what to do?
Right.
The Constitution doesn't say anything about that. So that's one of the reasons why. And New Yorkers were just kind of stuck in it. I mean, really,
They couldn't do anything about it.
you're gonna do anything about it, not to fix it, not on their own, except for leaving the area. That was always the founding fathers' answer. Like, if you don't like it, go to another city, another state. So,
I mean, that's why, I've said this already, this is why the 50 states work so well.
yeah. I mean, you're supposed to have like those.
If America was one state, I don't think America would work.
Well, and that's why it's illegal to prevent somebody
Texas
who's not a
must
felon
secede.
from moving from one state to the other. Like if you have problems like, hey, I really hate how Idaho is being run because I hate potatoes or something like that. And so you gotta get out of there.
Move to
Yeah, you-
somewhere else.
Yeah,
And that's why people don't move out of America, because America is good,
Yeah.
like generally, much better than a lot of other countries.
Right.
And so you don't want to move out of America, but you don't like where you are, you can just move to a different part of America.
That's right.
But then people claim that America is the worst.
Well,
But then they
Well.
still stay.
that's just how it is.
It's because
It'd be
the
like that.
people who claim that America is the worst have not been outside of America.
Or no, but it's like that.
They're the majority.
I think there's different specific reasons and there's different like meta big reasons, like step back. And one of them is that people hate those on top and they feel justified hating those on top. And some of it has to do with competition. They want to be on top. Some of it is they're kind of fixated on things that they have been told are very bad, and they might be very bad, but they ignore good things, right? So people can be very cynical, right?
A lot of people ignore the good things.
It's easier to pick on bad things. Like whenever I had to do like literature review stuff in college, it's always easier to take the position of critic and say what's wrong with the book than it is to outline what's good about it. It's easy. It's easy to find flaws. When you look at it, I mean, people are good about this with faces, with facial recognition. They're really good about seeing what's wrong with somebody's face. It's like, miss a spot when you shave. But like, not so good about seeing what's right about a face. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You have
Yeah.
those.
you have nose.
Hey, let's do another one.
Y'all have about
Because I feel like we just take those things for granted.
We do.
what's that picture of?
Like electricity. This is a steel mill, and it's doing something called the Bessemer process.
A steel.
Steel mill, like STEL. And what they're doing is they're making steel. Now, steel has been around in human societies for a long time, but steel making process has always been very difficult. You need a very hot burning fuel called coke, which is like a very refined charcoal. You have to put a lot of oxygen in there to make sure it burns good and hot.
That's what you use for traditional weaponry.
And you had to make sure that that iron expands well enough to allow carbon to come in and things like that, and or much less making alloys. Well, Bessemer steel speeds up the process, makes it cheaper, where they can take lumps of pig iron, which is junk iron, and make it into suitable steel for making bridges and railroads and eventually buildings and skyscrapers, right?
Yes.
So this is like to help build America. So this is where we have technology is helping lead the way. So technological innovations such as the Bessemer steel process enabled faster production of good quality steel, led to an increase in railroad productions, buildings, and bridges. And a lot of this came from a company called U.S. Steel. It's kind of essentially a monopoly, right? Ran by a guy named Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie.
Yes.
And he's really smart in that he learned a lot from the British on steel mills, but he saw some problems with how they did the process. What they would do is they had all this equipment and they would try to keep up the equipment, keep it in pristine condition. And he did cost calculations and found if he just got all the equipment and if he just ran it until it broke, he'd make enough money to buy a new set of equipment, just run it until it broke, until over and over again. And so he's able to mass produce very quickly and more profitably and stuff.
I mean, it's wasteful, but it's smart.
It seems wasteful, but then
Well, I mean, then
you
you
could salvage some
you
of it.
can reuse a lot of it. And
Mhm.
then, I guess it's not wasteful. It's actually just more efficient.
Well, think about, I like to think of it like as a shovel. You know, if you're using a shovel, it's like, oh, it's starting to break. Then you just like try to fix it. You know, is it better to do that or just buy a new shovel?
Break it.
Yeah, I,
Just keep working.
I break
Well, it's like, say you, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
yeah.
You can come up with examples all day, but like, if you make enough money with one thing to
Mhm.
buy the same thing to make the same amount of money, you're just growing in money.
Yeah, as
Just
long as you're cutting a
growing
profit. Why are there kids in the hallway?
It's not time.
No, it's not time. It's not time till 2:30. Yeah,
2:30.
2:25.
I thought it was 25.
2:25. 2:25. Yeah. All right.
It's like,
So-
what?
Yeah, Carnegie was pretty smart. Yeah, he
But
grew
I
up
thought people hated him.
super well. Yeah, but
Hated
I
on
mean,
this side.
okay. Union people hated him, but he actually wasn't even that bad to the unions compared to other guys at the time. But he did a lot of things. He funded colleges, even like the Tuskegee College, libraries, all kinds of stuff. He helped out a lot of poor kids throughout the world. Carnegie was an alright guy.
Wait, so people don't like him because he's from the South?
No, he wasn't. No,
Who's
he's an Irishman,
Oh.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
but-
people don't like him. He was
Yeah,
right.
he was Irish.
maybe. Yeah, he pronounced his name as Carnegie, not Carnegie.
Ew. That's the root.
That's really weird.
Yeah, he's all right. I mean, so breakthroughs in electricity, good. We like electricity. All of a sudden, you don't need a bunch of oil to keep light, and the light's more stable.
Yeah.
Mass communication, telegraph wires going everywhere. Shipping, and shipping, of course, through the choo-choo trains. So Thomas the Engine is bringing people, information, and goods all across America. This allows factories to produce more and faster. Large numbers of immigrants made up the workforce in these industries. And a lot of immigrants were coming in because a lot of people who were immigrants from like the British Isles, right? Scots, Irish, and English who came to America had the long-seated idea that the way to live life was to be a farmer, get your own patch of land, and make the best of it. So they didn't want to make low wages in what they thought of as wage slavery, is what the term was. Making a low amount of money and being told what to do, doing the same thing every day in a dangerous job. So that's why they had a lot of people, especially Eastern Europeans and Italians, coming in, working these jobs. They were recruited overseas. They actually had recruiters over there for different factories. And they would come in for a year, sometimes longer, make their money, and go back home usually. Though some did come with their families and stay. Cities grew as factories employed more people, and as more people moved to these cities for work. So cities, of course, growing. You have more people, you have more cities. They didn't have mass transportation yet. So people had to live close to the factory, walking distance. And if you're working like a 12 to 15, 16-hour day, you got to live really close. And so you had the building of slums and stuff like that around these factories. And factories are usually next to a river because a lot of times they need water, and it's also a cheap form of transportation and stuff like that. We're going to do one more after this, and we're done for the day, I think.
Yeah.
So,
You're pushing it, Mr. White.
Huh?
You're pushing it.
I'm pushing it. You does not.
No.
There's something like I think the average attention span for an adult is like 20 minutes, and they start tuning out unless they're more disciplined. They can go longer. But
An hour and 20 minutes.
yeah. Well, that's why like my job is honestly I'm supposed to break up what I do, like break it up into different things. Is what it is.
It is what it is.
Like if it's something I'm really interested in, I can listen to it for like 3 hours. But I got to be in that mood too. I just can't.
Dude,
You can't force
like,
yourself to watch something you like.
I'm so bad at that. I'll turn on the TV and I'll go right on my phone and just continue.
No, I don't even watch TV. I watch a fight every now and again. That's it.
UFC.
That's right. All right.
What?
This is a picture of a very corrupt individual named Jay Gould, right?
You don't
And
like
so Gould is he's a railroad guy, but he's going to be one of those super corrupt politicians who's going to bribe a lot of people. He's going to run a lot of businesses underground using kind of shady methods.
What is he supposed
And
to
he's
say?
actually also going to help cause
Union Pacific
kind of a
Railroad.
depression in a sense, where he's going to crush a lot of banks and cause a panic in America, a
Is he
financial
supposed to
panic.
look like a snake?
Yeah, like a snake. He's like,
So what is on his chest? Or
Union
does-
Pacific Railroad.
yeah.
Ah, okay.
So here he is, like a snake, like swallowing up.
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm like 100% sure his belly is this, because that's him swallowing all of his money.
Yeah,
That's
he's,
Why
actually
is his
pretty
face
good
down at the bottom?
cartoon.
why is
Because
he-
he's a snake.
he's Slytherin.
But no snake has that big of a tail.
But he's a,
What about what
No,
about
the
those boa
snake is the head of
constrictors
a
that
human,
eat like
sir.
goats?
it's supposed to represent that he's swallowing every.
Oh.
Yeah,
I get it.
he's swallowing up the competition. Yeah. I got a biography of him somewhere. Yeah, he was kind of he was one of those guys who would just like, he loved crushing companies and even
Just
if
for the
it
fun of it.
just for the fun of it, even if it made a lot of people unemployed all of a sudden, or even if it hurt the country, he didn't care. It was like his game. All right, so new industries needed railroads for shipping their products. Railroads expanded rapidly after the Civil War, especially towards the West. People saw the great success of the railroad before and especially during the Civil War. The railroad is one of the reasons why the North had such a nice advantage, because they got people and stuff quickly. And the North had standardized railroads. The South, the trains were all of different sizes and they needed different sized tracks. So you couldn't even have one train go across to another city. Sometimes it had to stop at a town, unload all of its cargo on a different kind of train that can use another kind of tracks. And that was expensive. And eventually you're going to have standardized railroads. But yeah, expansion aided development of the West because people can move out. And now if you're a farmer or even a cattle driver or something like that, a rancher, you can all of a sudden have access to sell your stuff to the rest of the world, and you can buy stuff made in factories. So it's really cool. And also the mail, you can mail things and order from catalogs. This facilitated the growth of ranching, farming, and mining in the West. Yeah. The rails connected the rest of America through product catalogs, magazines, telegraph wire. Yeah, wherever a train went, the railroads, telegraph wires were built along with them. Part of it is that railroad companies use these. It helped railroads helped standardize time across the nation. So because railroads had to have the same time or the same metric of time, so that you didn't have trains collide. They
And that's
had to
why
know
they
what
had
time the
pocket
schedule
watches.
was.
That's why they had the pocket watches.
And also they had to communicate in case there was an emergency and something like that, or if there was a change in the schedule.
Telegram.
So wherever the trains went, modernization went with it. And so this is going to help the West become a little more tame, I guess. Which is good for them, because living out in the West back when it was like really wild, you didn't always make it, right? I mean, of course, things still were dangerous. I mean, if you got sick, the medicine didn't really work. If you got hurt, the medicine didn't really work. I mean, if you're having a baby, you might be okay. You might not. Yeah, medicine didn't work. So,
Suck it up.
I mean, if you had problems with bandit, I'm sorry, or a robber, sorry.
Buy your own gun.
Buy your own gun and hope your neighbors hear you or can hear you, like due to distance. I mean, yeah, there like a lot of things to think of. It's like fire, ambulance, police services, hospitals. They didn't have any of that. There were still like wild animals in some places that hunt people, like grizzlies and like wolves and stuff like that. Mountain lions.
Wait, so is the first book bigger than this one?
Yeah.
Oh, I already have 2 giant English books that I have to carry on the same day, plus another big one, plus 2 notebooks.
Oh, that's for you to read at home. You don't need to bring that here.
Oh, at all?
Yeah, that's for you to read at home.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes in study hall, I want to catch up.
Let me find my book. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, you want to. Let me find my book. I'll give y'all recommended chapters. You don't have to read all of them. Some of them have to do with things on.
Should probably like fix it, right?
Oh, damn it.
I did print it last year and save it.
What?
Oh, a letter that I had another class read, and I thought of it anyway. Very good.
You guys want to finish your lunch?
Mr. White,
Good.
your thing is still straight.
Oh.
Hi,
Okay.
students.
Well, she might want to hear it too. Oh, it's just fun.
Oh, is this a live stream or is it a thing you're putting on YouTube?
It's live stream. All right, so if you have your book, which is good to have,
Yep.
I'm trying.
I'm trying. Let me see. Not 16. Yeah, chapter 17 would be a good one to read because this has a lot to do with what we're talking about here. Of course, it's a different perspective, but that's good. Sometimes you want to read different perspectives. And he goes a lot more into social history as I do. And I can tell that the author, 16 and 17. No, just 17.
Just chapter 17.
Yeah, just chapter 17.
Do you think I can find it online to read tonight?
I was like, maybe. People put stuff up online all the time.
Right. And it needs to be read by Friday?
But you really, we're not going to have a test for probably another 2 weeks, and we're going to have a review beforehand. Hey, thank you for joining our stream. If you have the textbook, please read chapter 17. It'll help you out a lot. Otherwise, we'll see you in a couple of days. Bye-bye.
Oh, wait. Right over.